there, and they have a meeting room down there.
Rest facility and I believe a small cafeteria.
So,
Sorry.
so,
They first-hand look at it.
so my point, Gary, is you bring up the $400,000 to $500,000 when it's clear that, how do you handle the other issues there?
Right.
Do you know about that?
Absolutely. And
So how
if
do you
it
handle it?
expanded to that, then I think it's a good idea to try to get a handle on the number of what it would cost to do the improvements necessary to stay here.
Right.
Versus
Exactly.
building something new. Because right now, it's sort of muddled. I mean, part of this
But that-
was the $500,000 that was presented in the feasibility study that Chris had said would take what it would take. I don't know where the number came from, but that was to do all of the work around this building to make it acceptable.
But it doesn't solve the ADA problem.
And
Well, I don't know where that number came from. I don't
But-
know how he
but-
derived that
But
number.
the fact that there are offices below.
Well, the elevator
basement.
goes downstairs,
No, it
doesn't
doesn't.
it? Okay. Well, I mean, I've put in elevators that, it's $50,000 for a new elevator. You gotta increase the shaft, it might be $100,000. So what does it cost? Is it $1 million to fix everything here?
Did we look
That's-
at
Oh,
Larry
no.
bringing the elevator down to
we're
the
still
basement?
having a
Did we
building.
look at that option?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean
Did I
to.
look at the option?
No, the elevator.
Not you, so did anybody look at what would it cost to bring the elevator down?
I don't believe so, Mr. D'Amelio, no. And I don't know how you can get that existing elevator down in that building
couldn't.
without removing any other offices that we have down there or restroom facilities, and then we're already in a matchbox. We don't have a room.
And the restrooms are, none of them
And the
are
rest,
handicapped.
you would eliminate the restrooms.
What was that, Maureen?
And now
What
let's
did you
add in
say?
recreation.
And
Trying to jump in and say that when we started with this, it started out with a master plan that was done in and if you go back and look at the master plan that was done 6 years ago, one of the reasons why we looked at consolidating the police and administration offices is because you have overhead and operational costs associated with each of the three facilities where your administration is right now. This building, in order to bring it up to date, if you go into the basement, and ironically, there are codes inspectors there, but the conference room was removed from the basement because it doesn't have code compliant ceiling height.
right.
There is water that runs into the telephone room like a river. We've replaced the floor, I don't know how many times. We just replaced a floor in the former fire marshal's office where the health inspector and a codes inspector are. We have some serious issues. You don't have adequate clearance between the floor and the ceilings, and without underpinning that foundation to get the additional depth, you're not going to. Additionally, you would have to do some water improvements to try and remediate some of the water intrusion that you have there. You're going to have to do something about the mold, but that
Where's the water come from?
it comes right through the wall. It comes
the
right
rain
through
or-
the wall. And we get it in the front corner and also on this side. We get it in two spots. We get it over by the records room and we get it out in the
When it
front
rains very
corner.
heavily, it just
Right
floods.
past where the old drive-through used to be.
Okay, so when it rains heavily, it floods?
Yes.
Is that the only time you get water?
And
There's no creek underneath that, you get the hydrostatic water
No,
that
but
comes
I
up?
think that when the addition was put on finance, when they added that addition that steps down and they put a drive-through window in, it doesn't look like there's basement space under there, and I think that there's some kind of drainage issue going on under that finance addition,
and
because that's where the water is coming from.
So it's Amy's fault.
So that doesn't give you
Mr. President, and it still would be a building that is undersized for what every study has shown that we need, including the ones that Mr. Bogosian did when he was on the committee, correct?
Yeah, well, the study I did was about 10 years ago, and I think
And it was
they've been-
verified by Mr. Gauman this year, Mr. Bogosian.
I think that they've been
Mr.
reducing.
Bogosian, was it not verified almost exactly by Mr. Gauman this year? That's a yes or no.
Or the square footage.
Yes.
Oh, are you in your legal counsel mode right now?
I'm in
A
my
yes or
mode
no?
as a commissioner trying to provide answers and clarification to this board and to the residents. How you perceive me is your perception. I'm going to ask the questions, how I feel fit.
I believe that Chris did verify that
Yeah.
there was a space requirement.
Yeah. And
But that
that's,
did not include taking this building and using it, because once you folded this building, which is 2,000 square feet, and repurposed it for office space, and even to bring up the recreation department, you probably would find that you could have enough room. I think the bigger question is, what does it cost, if it costs, to renovate this? Because you're not working with that number. There was a number presented in scheme number 3, and it showed clearly that it was, 500,000 or whatever the number was. That's in the feasibility study. So if you voted for scheme number 3, you would be voting for that. You would also be voting for 5,000 square feet of conference center space in the new building. Now, this room itself is about 1,000 square feet. So you would be voting for about 5 times more space built in the new building dedicated for the conferencing centers and commissioners' room. In option 3, that's the one that was in the feasibility study.
Thank you. Thank you.
and just to point out, ignoring the issue of the library, if we take that aside, that is why the property committee had unanimously recommended, before we brought in the issue of the library, that the township building be consolidated with the police station for a combined municipal services building so that we would have adequate facilities for our staff, adequate facilities for the police, proper rooms, shared space, ADA compliant, and provide our staff with the ability to work without the hindrances of leaks, heaters, and everything else that they have to suffer through each day. And whether, taking the library out of the equation, which has created a dramatic increase in volatility in this debate, what we just heard from Lori highlights the problem and demonstrates why sometimes, at least in my view, renovations are not going to be the answer. Sometimes they are, but I just don't see it in this circumstance that we are doing any service to residents, staff, or anyone else by continuously throwing money into a building that is inadequate in virtually every way.
Commissioner Emilio.
I'm just curious, Mr. Siegel, Mr. Bogosian's an architect, and you said that you didn't agree with his opinion about utilizing this building, and I didn't hear why exactly? Because
It still didn't, I'm looking for the numbers from our reports. I'm looking for the proper report.
Based on the
I
architects.
hear what you're saying, I agree with some of what you're saying. I don't think we're gonna, the intent for me would be, if I were to vote to renovate the administration building, would not be just to throw money and to put a Band-Aid on it, but it would be to fix the issues that apparently are there. And if that includes utilizing this building and bringing the cost down, then that's something that the board should really seriously consider. If it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't work, then fine, but I just need to know, if you're saying no, he's an architect and you're an attorney, and I respect that, but I just need to know why you think utilizing this building would not be.
Still didn't provide us with the adequate space and resources, and you still are left with a township building or an administration building that is so sort of deficient in every way that you can't make that building usable the way we need it for our staff. And that's the problem. That's it's like having an old car that you can only repair so much, but you can't put in airbags. You can't do all those things. And while you can, fix it up, it's not going to be adequate to meet appropriate
Buildings and
standards.
cars are just two
I understand.
totally different.
I'm not saying it's the most apt analogy, but the point is that, that was why originally, and it is remarkable that last year we put out RFQs for the combined administration or the municipal facilities building that was for the most part, if it wasn't unanimously approved by this board, it was 7-2 or 8-1, because the consensus of this board was that that was what was the best solution. All of the other discussions have come about because the library's been added into the mix. And I think this board has, to a large extent, lost sight of where we were a year ago. And one of my biggest concerns, and I've expressed this to some of the members of this board, is that we don't lose sight of the fact that last fall, we unanimously agreed that we need, or eight, like I said, 7 or 8 of us, that we needed a combined municipal services facility. That was step 2 in our plan. The first step was to repair or to renovate the Public Works Yard. That's been done. We had sent out RFQs. Those are requests for qualifications. We received those back. We were in the process of preparing to look at those to determine who we would send out proposals to give us more information. That was work that the Property Committee had unanimously agreed was where we needed to go. Then, when the issue of the library came up, suddenly we're in a position where there is something else in the mix. There is something that, for better or for worse, is more controversial and certainly has caused significant debate on this board, sometimes I think to the detriment of this board. But the point is, we've seemed to have lost sight of where we were a year ago, and that was we needed these facilities, and we had, or the majority believed, that we couldn't let go. We couldn't just make do, with what we had. Whether, I don't know why that part of the equation has so dramatically changed. The condition of the township building has not improved, there's no question. We hear it's worse. The police station is not going to get better. Everyone who's looked at that building just sort of shudders at the conditions that the police work in. And I just think, whatever we do next week, let's not forget where we were a year ago, because if we are, we're taking, to me, an inexplicable step backwards.
Yeah, I just like to add to that. The reason why, and this is my own personal feeling, it's not this board, is that when you had, it's like you have 2 kids going to college. Well, you can send them to nice universities and great thing. When you add a third into the mix, that means the other 2 aren't going to be going to the greatest colleges. So we have that same thing here. Everybody was under the perception that we were moving forward with this township building police station, and we had dollars in mind and how this thing was going, and now we see the library has been added to that. Well, we need to make concessions in some of those things, and we needed to look at everything. So we had to take this whole thing apart and start again, because there was a need for the library in the community. I don't think we took a step back. I think we took a step forward in accepting the library into this and into putting him to the mix and going over every possible, anything that we could possibly do to save money in this and provide all these plans. You will be making a decision on this next week. I think we will be. But I think that it was a necessary that we went through this process, and that the public had input in this process, and that we have things like 3B, and that we have all those, everybody has got what they need to make a decision.
So I'm still confused about 3B, all right?
Yes.
I'm sorry. And again, I'm not trying to be difficult. 3B was thrown at us tonight, and I'm
Yes.
still trying to understand.
Well, 3B is just, from my understanding, all 3B is taking 3 and reconfiguring some of the things.
But what I'm hearing is that the price or the cost to renovate the administration, the 4 to 600, which is more 600,000. Am I right?
Correct. It is 600,
But it's not feasible. to use
575.
This building.
Okay,
That includes this building, correct? You're
I just took it from the feasibility studies.
okay.
No.
Chris,
Steve, could I answer your question? Because I think you know where you're going. The 400 to 600,000 here, noted as the renovated administration with recreation department, is from this one page in the report that says renovate existing buildings to address mechanical, electrical, and plumbing and cosmetic upgrades. 540,000. So forget 400 to 600, 540.
600.
Okay. But on that same page,
Right.
the other option for this property, renovating this property here, includes having to build new meeting space at the new space, renovating this space for an expanded recreation department. That's at 2.6 million. So that number 400 to 600,000 here doesn't include the 2.6 million, or the 2.6 million is somewhere else that it's going to take to do the renovations we're talking about and accommodate new space in the new, I guess, at the police station for us to meet. Because we're talking about offices here. Now, just for purposes of talking about this room, we have, in my 9 years here, we've had hundreds of people in the room here for really controversial issues, including the discussions we've had in this library.
And not just
With
these
one-
meetings, but
Yeah, not just these meetings.
other
Yeah,
committees.
other
meetings.
ven-
One
well, we've gone to
bathroom
other
behind
venues
that
because we
door that
couldn't-
most
we
people
couldn't-
don't even know exists. I mean, this is dreadful meeting space. I mean, this is not
So-
what a
so-
modern first-class
So the
township
plan
should
would
be
be,
doing.
the plan that Gary's talking about would be not to use this as a meeting area, right? Is that what you're saying?
No, this needs
would
to
be
be
Have a
rec
bigger
department
building.
and
A
other
bigger
rec
building.
department.
Am I right, Gary?
No, it's, all we did is take option 3, which says to put
I think you should.
Okay, yeah.
hear him on the camera.
Gary,
Go up here, Gary, on the mic.
Your option 3 says to spend $2.5 million renovating this and putting 5,000 square feet over at the new building. $2 million is that 5,000 square feet. That's a big price tag. What I'm saying is that we have 1,000 square feet here. If we put 3,000 square feet over there, that's the second line of the option 3B, is whatever it is at, 6 to 800,000. So it's almost $1.5 million to replace this with a conference center, but a smaller conference center. So I was just suggesting that we don't spend $2.5 million, we only spend $1.5 million. Because we don't need as much of a conference center over there. And those numbers, a lot of these numbers are going to be flushed out as you go through the process with whoever you hire. And don't forget, every time we vacate this building, we still have to deal with the elevator, with the mold problem, with the water, to whoever we're selling this to. So we've got to be careful that we're not left with a white elephant, just like the same issue with the library. You put the library over there, now we have to deal with that building. We move this, we have to deal with this building, so you have to figure that into your strategies.
That's a very good point.
So you're
because-
going to have to fix those things, somebody will.
So in the figures that we have to vote on Monday,
correct.
does it include the building, fixing this building? For if we sell it, does it include that? Does it include what we have to do
It
for
doesn't
this
include,
building?
it doesn't include selling this building.
No.
No.
Well, I mean,
It's
what he's
option
saying is I
For
think
option
accurate.
3, if you voted with your option, the one that they gave you.
We
in
can't leave the
feasible-
building the way it is if we want to sell it. We'd have to fix the problems anyway.
You can, we have a
So as
long-term
is.
lease.
Sell anything as is.
It's not correct.
You can knock everything down, put up a parking lot, and get the revenue from the meters.
We could do that.
Yeah,
Except
but
for
that's
the
not part of the,
historical.
Just like Westchester did, went from 300 to
That's
1.6.
right.
Okay,
We could knock it down.
that's,
But we still have the tower. We have a long-term lease on that tower, right?
That's
there.
right.
Which is a revenue generator, though,
Around it.
so.
Look, I'm looking at the options right now. Option 3 has $7.3 million for a police station, with the administration building here being fixed for $400,000. Now, that doesn't include 5,000 feet of space. Because Scheme 2, the new Township Administration Building with the new police station, is also $7.325 million for the police station.
That's
So
just the police component, but it should be in your scheme 3, should have the $2.5 million.
it's not.
not.
It's not there.
It's not there.
It's not there at all.
So,
So this number, I mean,
Scheme three.
there's
Yeah,
$2.5
scheme
million
three.
dollars missing from this.
Your option 3, your scheme 3.
And if 5,000 feet of working, if 5,000 extra feet of space is $2.5 million, and we have $7.32 million for the police station, that's only $9 million, 9.5. So that's not even as high as the 10.5 you have on 3B, but it doesn't mention anything about administration. I think there's a lot of apples and oranges here. Like I said, I'm happy to consider it and put it in front of everybody. People do need to be aware that this scheme 3, and I hate the word scheme, option number
So do I.
3 in this budget from IMC does not include the renovation of this space and the addition of meeting space in the new building.
And the current building, I was trying to find the report and I finally located it, is approximately 7,300 square feet. The recommended area we need is roughly 20,000 square feet for the administration. I know it's a little lower, I can't find that number, and I'm having an allergy attack, and so my eyes are killing me. But those are the numbers. We're talking a dramatic need difference. Of course, this was a building that was built the township building almost 100 years ago, and we were told in the 50s needed to be replaced, so we've outgrown it for decades.
I'd like to also know next week when we vote on this, how is it going to work? Because we could have, there's 7 different plans. We could have 2, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1 all the way along. Does something have to hit 50% of the commissioners agreeing with it? Like, is there a runoff vote or anything, or what? I mean,
It takes 5, and those will be put up by, so you'll choose what you want to do.
but again, we could have all commissioners come up with different ideas,
I
and
don't know how that's
that's
going
why
to
they-
work.
we may never get to 5, and then
5 on
we're.
any of the
So that's my point, like in an
Public can see
election,
outside.
you have a runoff, until the lower ones get knocked off, and then everybody votes again, and you get to the point where you have the options, 2 options, and you vote on the 2 options, and one of them gets 50%, one of them doesn't. I mean, I'd like to know what the process is.
This is how I envision the process could go next week, and this is how I suggest it should go. Somebody's going to make a motion
Correct.
for the board to take a certain action on a certain plan. And it's going to be a library, it's going to be a police station, it's going to be a township building, it's going to be doing something with all 3 of those, something with any of those 3.
And it doesn't
And
have
if
to be
that
any
has-
of those
Right.
plans. It could be a mix of the plans, but they
Yeah,
would
and-
bring
and
it up.
that- Right, and that commitment is that that the board is going to direct our township staff to start the process on doing those things. Now, whatever recommendation that is from whatever commissioner that is, if that has 5 votes, that's what we're doing. If it doesn't, if we debate, if 3 people put out 3 different ideas, we're going to have a robust debate about it. Hopefully, it's not a violent debate. And then, and then just, like I said, the public's going to see how the sausage is made. I mean, nothing's going to happen next week that isn't ultimately to the satisfaction of a majority of this board.
Right. And it's up to this board whether they want to make the decision next week or not. Whether, if there's enough deliberation, to continue. I would like to make the decision.
Yeah, right. It's not the end of the world, and I'm not suggesting I'm going to do this next week. It's not the end of the world if at the end of next week's meeting, there's a plurality of people here who have 2 different ideas about how we should do things. There's 4 people who want this and 4 people who want that, and 2 people who just don't want to do anything. And we may have to
10.
meet.
10.
And we would
You're
have
the budget guy.
The 10th ward come in.
I hear where you were going
I'm
with that.
counting, our solicitor. But my point is, my point is that it's either 5 people here are going to agree about the next steps, or they're not. But the next steps, if there are 5 votes next week, I hope there's 9 votes, is the step we're going to take is direct the township manager to employ the financial advisor, to employ the architects to do the plans, employ the engineers, start the process of starting the construction of these buildings, borrow the money, do all those things. But the act next week will be finally to narrow down and direct our staff to do it. We still have to come back with borrowing and okay the money. We still have to come back with a contract awarded to a general contractor or a project manager and vote for that. I mean, the same lengthy process it took us to do the work at Haverford Reserve, but it all started with that one very important vote when, I think 9-0, the board said, we're going to build on that site, we're not going to build a pool, we're going to dedicate this much to stuff, now go do it and report back to us, and come back to us each time you need official board action.
And that took more than one meeting.
That's how I expect that to proceed.
Right.
So, anybody has a different plan?
The original question back in November was to the board, consider if you would,
Right.
the library.
Yeah.
So maybe the first question should be, should the library be included in the plan? Yes or no? And then the second question should be, should the township consider building the two structures as recommended by the building committee? Yes or no?
When you say in the plan, you mean in the plan of the new building?
No, I
Because
would
it should
say
be
the-
probably in the plans at some point as to getting money to
The original
fix it up. So,
as Mr. Siegel said, the original plan was to present two departments, with the administration building and the police department down on Veterans Memorial Field there. So going back to that original statement, the first question is, should the library be included in that plan, yes or no? And then whatever it's if it's yes, then move forward in that direction. If it's no, then move forward in the direction of the two buildings. You know, all right, then as presented by the building committee,
Kenneth didn't answer my question.
that's where I guess either you can go with the options
Right.
or
I
just do the two new buildings.
we-
I think it's just going to, this is going to, I don't think it's,
I think it's going to play out where,
I think it's just going to play out. And I don't, if you ask the
all gonna
question,
play
should the
out, that's
library
true.
be
It's
it's going to
included?
play out, but what's going to happen is there's no set way it's going to happen.
Right.
Somebody may say, okay, I want to put on the table option 3. This is how I want it to, and then everybody could vote. We could get 5 votes for it. It's over. Or we could do it the way you're talking about.
Yeah, but
You can bring it up. You can say, let's vote on whether to include the library or not. If there's 5 votes for it, there's
But here's the deal, like, to me, if you do it that way, then I now I have to change my vote, because my feeling is that if you do it that way, the library is staying the way it currently is, and nothing's being done to it at all. So then I would have to vote for the library at the new building, because I think something should happen with the
But
library.
that's okay. That's part of the deliberations next week. If Chris Connell brings up the motion of
well.
library, yes or no, before you vote, you're going to